The Great Pyramid, one of the most studied ancient riddles on Earth.
There were tens of thousands of people here building the pyramids. Where's their settlement?
6 million tons of stone, shaped and transported over 30 years, to build an eternal tomb with a sacred purpose.
For more than 4,500 years, the pyramids of Egypt have stood in silence, while every generation has tried and failed to fully understand how they were designed, built, and what their creators truly intended. In 2026, researchers stopped looking at the pyramids as isolated monuments and did something different. They brought together decades of archaeological records, high-resolution satellite imagery, LiDAR surveys, thermal scans, muon detection data, architectural measurements, astronomical models, and geological records. Then they gave the entire collection to an advanced AI system and asked it to do what no individual research team could do alone: search for patterns across everything, not just inside one pyramid, across the chambers, the stones, the shafts, the surrounding temples, the older monuments, the landscape, and the sky above them. What the system returns is where the story becomes difficult to explain. The results did not prove that an unknown civilization built the pyramids. They did not reveal a lost machine or a secret technology hidden beneath the sand, but they did reveal something unsettling: patterns that had been sitting inside the data for decades, relationships between structures built centuries apart, geometric connections extending far beyond the visible monuments, anomalies inside the Great Pyramid that existing maps still cannot completely explain, and signs that the builders may have been working from a level of long-term planning far greater than anyone had previously considered. The AI did not discover a new pyramid. It discovered something potentially more disturbing: that we may have been looking at the pyramids the wrong way all along, the alignment nobody could explain away. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza has been famous for one extraordinary fact. It is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. The deviation is incredibly small. Researchers have proposed several explanations. Ancient Egyptian astronomers could have used the stars. They may have tracked the movement of the sun. They may have used shadows, sighting instruments, or combinations of observations repeated over many years. But the AI wasn't interested in repeating the old debate. It began with a different question. What exactly were the builders aligning the pyramid to? The system compared the pyramid's orientation with models of Earth's rotational changes, the positions of circumpolar stars in the ancient sky, solar movements, and astronomical conditions around the period of construction. Then it expanded the analysis. Instead of measuring the Great Pyramid alone, it compared the orientations of nearby structures across the Giza plateau. And the pattern became more complicated. The pyramids were not simply facing a convenient direction. Their orientations appeared to belong to a broader system of astronomical and geographical relationships. Some of those relationships were already known to Egyptologists. Others became visible only when the AI processed thousands of measurements simultaneously. The Great Pyramid was not standing alone. It was behaving like one point inside a much larger coordinate system. And that led to a more difficult question. If the builders were capable of planning one monument with extraordinary precision, how much of the surrounding landscape had been planned with it? The answer sent the AI beyond the pyramid itself. The geometry hidden across the plateau. The first maps produced by the AI looked ordinary. Pyramids, temples, causeways, smaller structures, burial sites, natural elevations, nothing unusual. Then the system removed the labels. It stopped seeing tombs, temples, and monuments. Instead, It treated every structure as a coordinate, a point in space. And when it began testing relationships between those points, repeating geometric patterns appeared, angles connecting major structures, distances that followed recurring proportional relationships, long axes extending through multiple parts of the plateau. Some of the patterns could be explained by practical construction. A causeway has to connect a pyramid to a valley temple. A temple has to fit the available terrain. A monument has to be placed on stable ground. But not every relationship was so easily explained. The AI repeatedly found that certain structures appeared positioned in ways that preserved larger geometric alignments even when simpler construction locations would have been available. The Giza Plateau began to look less like a collection of separate projects and more like a coordinated landscape, a design too large for someone standing on the ground to fully see. That was the first unsettling possibility, because ancient Egyptian builders had no satellites, no aircraft, no digital maps. Yet, they were working across a landscape with a level of spatial coordination that becomes much easier to recognize from above. The AI could see the entire design at once. The people who built it never could. Or could they? The chamber that should not have been there. Then the AI went inside the Great Pyramid. For decades, researchers have searched for hidden spaces using technologies the original builders could never have imagined. Thermal imaging, infrared surveys, ground-based measurements, cosmic ray muon detection. The pyramid has been scanned, mapped, measured, and modeled more thoroughly than almost any ancient structure on Earth. And yet, parts of its internal architecture remain uncertain. The AI combined multiple datasets and began comparing expected density models with actual readings. At first, it reproduced what researchers already knew: the descending passage, the ascending passage, the grand gallery, the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, known corridors, known voids. Then the system encountered something different: regions where the data did not agree perfectly. Not a clear room, not an obvious tunnel, but zones where the internal density and geometry appeared inconsistent with the simplest architectural models. Some anomalies could be explained by construction gaps, others by changes in stone density. But several regions remained statistically unusual. The AI repeatedly flagged the same areas, not because it knew what they contained, but because they did not behave like the surrounding structure. That distinction mattered. For thousands of years, people have imagined secret chambers filled with treasure, lost documents, or ancient technology. The data did not show that, but it did suggest something much more realistic and perhaps more mysterious. We may still not completely understand the internal architecture of the largest pyramid ever built. And if unknown spaces exist, the next question is unavoidable. Were they structural, symbolic, ceremonial, or were they designed for a purpose we no longer recognize? The precision problem. The AI then shifted its attention away from hidden spaces. It looked at the stones, millions of them, different sizes, different positions, different phases of construction. For generations, the central mystery surrounding the Great Pyramid has been simple. How did ancient workers move so much stone? But the AI found another question more interesting. How did they keep the entire structure geometrically consistent while doing it? Moving a single massive block is difficult. Maintaining alignment across a monument covering more than 13 acres is something else entirely. A small error at the base can become a major error near the top. A slight shift in angle can distort the entire structure. Yet the Great Pyramid rises with remarkable consistency. It is not mathematically perfect. No human structure is. But the AI found areas where deviations were controlled with surprising precision. The builders were clearly correcting errors as construction continued. That meant they were measuring, checking, adjusting, comparing each new stage against a larger reference. But what was that reference? A physical plan? A geometric model? A network of sighting points around the construction site? The AI could not determine the answer. Instead, it identified something stranger. The precision was not evenly distributed. Some sections appeared to follow tighter geometric control than others. The builders seemed to know where precision mattered most. That suggested the pyramid was not simply a mountain of stone built as high as possible. Its geometry had priorities, specific relationships that had to be preserved. And the AI wanted to know why. The shafts pointing into the ancient sky. The answer may have been hidden in 4 narrow shafts. For decades, the small channels extending from the king's and queen's chambers have fascinated researchers. Their purpose remains debated. Ventilation, symbolic passages, construction features, astronomical alignments. The AI compared the shafts with reconstructions of the ancient Egyptian sky around the time the pyramid was built. Then it adjusted for changes in Earth's axial movement over thousands of years. The results were not simple. Some apparent stellar relationships depended heavily on the exact construction date assumed. Others could have been coincidental. But the system found that the shafts were difficult to explain as purely random architectural features. Their angles appeared to preserve specific directional relationships, not necessarily to one single star forever, but to regions of the ancient sky that held major importance in Egyptian religious astronomy. The northern sky was especially significant. The stars that never disappeared below the horizon were associated with eternity. The dead pharaoh was not simply buried beneath stone. In Egyptian belief, he was entering another form of existence. The pyramid itself may have been a machine of symbolism, a structure designed to connect Earth, the horizon, the sun, and the eternal stars. But the AI found something more interesting. When it compared these astronomical directions with the orientations of other structures, the relationships did not always repeat exactly. They evolved. Different pyramids appeared to preserve different priorities. As if Egyptian builders were working with a complex astronomical tradition that changed across generations. The Great Pyramid was not the beginning of that knowledge, and it was not the end. To understand it, the AI had to go backward, to the pyramids that came before. The blueprint existed before Giza. The Great Pyramid did not appear suddenly. It was the product of centuries of experimentation. Before Giza came Saqqara. Before the Great Pyramid came earlier pyramids, bent pyramids, collapsed pyramids, stepped structures, experiments in stone that reveal something modern observers sometimes forget. The ancient Egyptians were learning, but the AI noticed an unusual pattern when it compared the construction history of major pyramids. The development was not a straight line. It was not simply primitive structures becoming increasingly advanced until the Great Pyramid appeared. The sequence was more complicated. Some techniques improved, others disappeared. Certain architectural solutions were abandoned and then replaced. Knowledge moved forward, but not evenly. The AI mapped construction methods, stone placement, internal chamber designs, and geometric proportions across multiple pyramid complexes. And what emerged was a pattern of experimentation followed by sudden refinement. The Great Pyramid appeared at a moment when several independent construction traditions reached an extraordinary level of coordination. Quarrying, transportation, surveying, stone shaping, internal architecture, large-scale workforce organization. The pyramid was not the invention of one man or one generation. It was the visible result of knowledge accumulated across centuries. But the AI discovered something else. some methods visible in earlier monuments appear to have been simplified or abandoned later. In other words, progress did not always move forward. Sometimes knowledge was lost. The most sophisticated solution was not always the one future generations continued to use. And that raised an uncomfortable possibility. What if the Great Pyramid represented not the beginning of an age of technological advancement, but the peak of a specific construction tradition that could not be perfectly reproduced afterward? The stone patterns that changed over time. The AI then examined high-resolution scans of masonry across different construction phases. Human researchers had already documented many differences: tool marks, stone sizes, mortar use, surface finishing. But the AI could classify thousands of small variations simultaneously. It began grouping construction techniques, and the timeline became increasingly interesting. Certain areas of the monument showed highly consistent working patterns. Other areas revealed more variation. That did not mean different civilizations built the pyramid. There is no evidence for that. But it did suggest something historians already understand about massive ancient projects. Knowledge was distributed. Some teams knew specific techniques. Some workers specialized. Some construction methods may have been passed through training rather than written instructions. The AI's model showed how easily a complex building method could change if even a small amount of knowledge was lost between generations. One team understood why a stone had to be placed in a particular way. The next generation may have understood only that it belonged there. The difference between those two things is enormous. One is engineering. The other is imitation. And across thousands of years, imitation can preserve the shape of knowledge long after its original purpose has disappeared. That possibility became even more disturbing when the AI examined the later history of the plateau. The shutdown wasn't simply abandonment. Most people imagine the pyramids as structures that were completed, sealed, and then gradually forgotten. The archaeological reality is more complicated. The Giza plateau remained part of Egyptian life and ritual history for centuries. Structures were visited, reused, modified, damaged, restored, and eventually transformed by the passage of time. The AI compared evidence of later activity across the plateau: construction debris, surface changes, burial activity, repairs, stone removal, landscape modification. And it found something interesting. Certain parts of the pyramid complexes received attention long after their original construction. Not all activity was random destruction. Some locations appear to have remained important, protected, visited, or deliberately incorporated into later traditions. The builders of later generations may not have fully understood the original engineering principles, but they understood that the structures mattered. The AI compared this pattern with other ancient monuments around the world. A recurring phenomenon appeared. When knowledge disappears, the structure often survives longer than the explanation for it. People remember that a place is sacred, but forget why. They preserve the ritual, but lose the original meaning. The Great Pyramid may have experienced something similar. The monument survived. The stories changed. The purposes were reinterpreted, and eventually, modern researchers inherited a structure older than almost every explanation written about it. The stones remained. The original voices did not. The bodies revealed the human story. Then the AI turned toward something that had been sitting in archaeological records from the beginning: human remains. The pyramids are often discussed as impossible monuments, machines, mathematical mysteries, astronomical structures, but none of them built themselves. Behind every block was a human being. Workers lived around the construction sites. They ate, they slept, they became injured, they died. Archaeological evidence from the Giza region has helped reveal that pyramid construction involved organized communities of laborers, specialists, administrators, and support workers. The AI combined skeletal studies, settlement data, food remains, tool distributions, and construction evidence. And instead of seeing a single workforce, it identified a massive logistical system: stone workers, surveyors, transport crews, food suppliers, tool makers, administrators, medical care, temporary and permanent settlements. The pyramid was not just an engineering project. It was a civilization-scale operation. And the AI found that the most remarkable technology may not have been a machine at all. It may have been an organization, the ability to coordinate thousands of people across decades, to maintain a shared objective, to transport resources, to preserve measurement standards, to replace workers without losing the overall plan. That is a form of technology, too, one that leaves fewer obvious artifacts than a metal machine, but one capable of building something that survives for 4,500 years. And then came the final pattern, the one that made the entire analysis difficult to dismiss as just another collection of coincidences, the larger pattern. When the AI combined every data set one final time, it stopped separating the evidence into categories: astronomy, architecture, geology, human remains, construction techniques, landscape design, internal chambers. It treated everything as one system, and what appeared was not a single hidden message. There was no secret equation carved into the stones, no undeniable proof of lost technology, no evidence that history must be rewritten overnight. Instead, the AI revealed something more subtle. The pyramids were connected to far more systems than they are usually studied within. They were engineering projects, religious monuments, astronomical symbols, political statements, geographic landmarks, centers of massive human organization, and parts of a landscape designed across generations. Perhaps the reason the pyramids remain difficult to explain is because we keep searching for one answer: a tomb, a power station, an observatory, a monument, a machine. But what if the real answer is more complicated? What if the pyramid was all of these things at once, in different ways, to different people? The AI could not tell us what the builders were thinking. No algorithm can recover a conversation that disappeared 4,500 years ago, but it could do something humans struggle to do. It could look at everything at once. And the more data it analyzed, the harder it became to see the Great Pyramid as a simple object from the past. It is the surviving center of an entire world that no longer exists, a world with its own mathematics, its own religion, its own political systems, its own construction traditions, its own understanding of the sky, and perhaps its own knowledge that has survived only in fragments. For thousands of years, people have searched inside the pyramids for the secret, behind a sealed door, inside an undiscovered chamber, beneath the stones. But the AI analysis suggested something different. Maybe the secret was never hidden in one place. Maybe it was spread across everything: the landscape, the geometry, the stars, the chambers, the stones, the people who built them, and the thousands of small decisions that, taken separately, seem ordinary, but viewed together, become something almost impossible to comprehend. The pyramids have not changed. The stones are the same stones they were when the last blocks were placed thousands of years ago. What has changed is the way we can study them. For the first time, artificial intelligence can examine data sets on a scale no individual researcher could hold in a single mind. And perhaps that is why the latest findings feel so unsettling. Because AI did not discover that the pyramids are impossible. It discovered that they may be far more complex than the simple explanations we have become comfortable with. And if this is what researchers can find by reanalyzing data we already possess, then one question remains: What happens when the next scan reveals something we haven't seen yet? If this changes how you see the pyramids, subscribe for more in-depth investigations. Like the video and share your thoughts below. Because sometimes the greatest discoveries are not buried beneath the sand. Sometimes they have been standing in front of us for thousands of years, waiting for us to finally understand what we are looking at